Okay, da krenemo. Okay. Hi, this is Digit Crash podcast, and today our guest is Nataša Kraljević, PhD candidate in the field of cultural policy and cultural diplomacy, as well as lecturer at the University Mediterranean Podgorica. Hi, Nataša, welcome.
Thank you, Milena.
So today we are going to talk about some currently important topics which are being discussed at our university and also in our academic community, and which are going to be seriously treated at the conference organized by our university in Montenegro, Kotor, in April this year. So the RSOM 25, with the title Cultural Development and the Future of Cultural Policy, planned in partnership with the International Journal of Cultural Trends, will deal with some issues in regards to the future of cultural policy in general, but also with some topics such as cultural policy transfer, cultural diplomacy, organizational culture, cultural values, democracy, and social justice. As the chair of the upcoming conference, RSOM 2025, planned in April this year, can you please tell me why these topics are important?
I find this moment in time very important to discuss these kind of topics, especially topics linked to cultural policy and the future of cultural policy, and how we're going to proceed from now on when it comes to the culture as such, as a system, and all procedures that we are using and implementing within our systems. Cultural policy, it's important topic also because we at this point, we have two kind of maybe approaches when it comes to cultural policy. We have on one side ex-Yugoslavian countries, such as Montenegro, and Eastern European countries, which end up being in situation to, in 90s, after the collapse of socialism, to rebuild their own systems, to find a way to fill in the gaps within the system and to make it as a whole again, to work again. So all 90s, we can count that we borrowed and transferred a lot of knowledge from the Western countries and from the system they were operating in the West. So when I talk about that, I'm talking about legal provisions, I'm talking about procedures, mechanisms that we implemented in our system. And now, today, it's 2025, which means that we have 40 or 45 years of time that passed. So we are now maybe in a very interesting moment to evaluate this past period. Because some of these instruments that we copied and implemented into our system, they simply don't work. Also, it's interesting that some of these so-called knowledge transfers happened directly, so just copy-paste some mechanisms and provisions, or they were slowly, indirectly implemented. Anyway, they are now part of the system, especially in the countries of ex-Yugoslavia, Montenegro, but also I can talk about Eastern European countries. On the other hand, these 45 years of time that I'm talking about is not only reserved for Eastern Europe and for ex-Yugoslavian countries. Western countries also have their 45 years of time. And they also changed a lot since 90s. So I think that this moment, it's very interesting that we can pause a bit and maybe discuss some issues and see what's working, what it's not working, what can be changed, and how we can approach towards a better and maybe more efficient system of cultural policy.
Okay, so very important segment of the conference is dedicated to the relationship between the organizational culture within the bounds of the institution and the broader civic ambitions which are necessary for any future articulation of cultural policy. You are describing them as tensions between these two sides. What do you mean by that?
At the beginning, I thought this topic is kind of local because it was Montenegrin issue in a sense that we have that we inherited all these big overstuffed, slow state institutions fully budgeted by the state. In one side, they're operating within the system of culture, and huge number of non-institutional actors. They are individuals, artists, non-governmental institutions, private entities. They are participating in creation of arts in the system, and they are actually operating independently from the system. So at some point in our Montenegrin case, there was a huge gap between these two poles, I would say. And even so, it was a tension because these budgeted states had that steady system of work and all this huge group of independent artists who were in unstable financial situations for most of the period, but also they were the engine of the culture of arts and of change in the field. So I can notice then in past year or two some changes have happened, and I can notice that institutions that I described earlier are reaching out a bit, and they would like to involve all these non-institutional actors to maybe join them to work together, and I find that as a good sign. Of course, but we still, then after some time, I figure out this is not just Montenegrin topic. This issue is very current, and it's happening all over. No matter are we talking about Yugoslavian countries, or we talk about Eastern European countries or Western European countries. In all these countries we can talk about position of independent artists and a number of institutions, how they work, do they support them, and is this all like a manpower that was created within different systems? Is this manpower really there to support artists in order to create art, or is because of something else? So this issue is actually much broader than I was thinking.
It seems to be.
Yes, at the beginning. So it's going to be also very important segment to discuss what is the position of artists today. Are they protected by the system? Are they part of the system? And what does it mean today to be a part of the system?
Very well. And there's another part, important part of the conference, which is cultural diplomacy. How are things in Europe in that department?
I always like to talk about cultural diplomacy. Cultural diplomacy and exchange of cultural and artistic products is always something that is very interesting to me, and I think very important, especially for the small countries like Montenegro. Cultural diplomacy was for many years considered the governmental business, as Professor Šešić would say. It's something that governmental agents would deal with. It's a part of Ministry of Foreign Affairs agenda, part of Ministry of Culture agenda, or special agencies that were created for the reason of promoting culture. But with all this change that we faced in past several decades, forced by internet, by globalization processes, many channels of communication have been developed. And at the end, we are now in a position to say that governmental agents are not enough for this kind of communication. That for cultural diplomacy, we need additional actors. We need institutions. We need artists. We need universities. We need independent groups. We need to have them all on board for this kind of communication. And or not. So this is something what is very debatable, especially if we look at the policies, actually the cultural diplomacy exercised by the countries. You can notice also a very strong division between big countries, economically strong countries on one side, and all the other countries on the other. So no matter how big, medium, geographically small, economically strong or big they are operating in similar way. And all these huge countries operating in similar way. So if we look at Great Britain or Russia or China or Italy, they operate and exercise cultural diplomacy in a very similar way through so-called traditional channels of the state, as I mentioned them before. And on the other side, we have so many countries today, including Montenegro, all ex-Yugoslavian countries, Eastern European countries, smaller European countries, other countries from other, countries from other continents. We can see that we have them operating in different way. Why? Because first they didn't have time, or they didn't have a power or momentum in history to develop this kind of strong mechanisms. But that doesn't mean that they are not operating in the department of cultural diplomacy. On the contrary, they are operating through different channels, through cultural exchanges, to theater co-productions, to festivals, musical events, motras, all kinds of events that are happening, and they are in position to create an amazing art, and they have very strong art scene, and they're very popular. So now is the question, even though UNESCO defined cultural diplomacy as a cultural exchange, of course, but now it's a question what cultural diplomacy is. Is this so-called traditional way of communication, or is all of this is cultural diplomacy? So I think this is also something what is a topic last few years, I would say all over, and I think it's interesting for us also to maybe define this kind of situation in world today, and to maybe see where are we at.
Okay, thank you, Nataša, for sharing these interesting insights with us, and see you next time.
Thank you, Milena.